So let's start off talking about this spat that has gone on as a consequence of M&S advertising on GB News. Those who are familiar with GB News, which I'm sure all our viewers are, will know that the advertising boycott has been an absolute nightmare for the channel, and the reality is TV stations need advertising to survive. But every time somebody tries to advertise on GB News, the leftists go insane and do everything in their power to make sure that they pull their advertising. And the latest row is with M&S. So we've got a tweet here from Michelle Dewberry, who shared the Stop Funding Hate post that's been going around. So Stop Funding Hate, they've put up this tweet saying, many Marks and Spencer customers will be disappointed to learn they've been advertising on GB News Radio. You can take action by leaving a friendly comment on their Facebook page, encouraging them to hashtag Stop Funding Hate. And Michelle Dewberry, she says, who's of course one of the GB News presenters, for those who don't know, she says, someone just sent me this. It's a perfect example of what I just referred to in my earlier tweet. Hate-filled activists are now bombarding Marks and Spencer's Facebook page, trying to bully them into removing advertising. Why? Because these hate-filled activists believe theirs is the only view permitted to be heard. And you'll see here that this is Headliners, and those who are familiar with GB News will know Headliners is essentially a comedy show, and they've put this clip together, which they've clipped very carefully to make the channel look evil. Let's have a little look at this.
They're evil. Women are horrible. Women shouldn't work. Women are incredibly jealous.
They didn't want to say what caused it. Caused it? There was a woman on board.
Middle-class women of a certain age.
You're not allowed to slap your secretary on the bum anymore.
This whole thing is by some woman.
Those women are hot, and they're flexible.
They let women teach, and they hate kids. It's a female feminist woman's party, so of course they're going to lie. They're evil. Women are...
So there we go. That's the clip that they've decided to use to try to make GB News like some horrible, misogynist, woman-hating channel. And of course, they've picked all of those clips out of a comedy show. Those comments being made about women are simply jokes being made by a comedian. But the reality is that the people who are not regular GB News viewers who see this post, after seeing that clipped up like that, are going to be likely to think that is a genuine, serious opinion that's been aired on the channel. And I just think that these people, they are not pro-freedom. They might act like they're pro-freedom, but they want censorship. They think that words are evil and that anyone that's got an opinion different to theirs doesn't deserve to have their opinion aired. I mean, it's just bonkers. I mean, Alex, what do you think about this? Do you think that they'll be successful in their campaign to get M&S to pull their advertising? Do you think they'll cave in?
It has worked before, sadly. I mean, obviously, I do not want that to be the case. I think it's great to see more advertisers on GB News. In fact, GB News is doing very well with advertisers at the moment. The channel has gone from strength to strength in that respect.
It is getting better, the advertising situation, slowly but surely.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot more people coming on board. In fact, I was, after hosting a show a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to a couple of advertisers who were walking through the studio. It was great. They were lovely people, great couple, actually, who owned a business in the UK. They wanted to advertise on GB News. Fantastic, right? But the problem is, these businesses, and we saw this with the Gaza boycotts as well, they face this sustained, lengthy attack, not just on their business, but sometimes aimed at their staff as well. It's really quite horrendous what some people have gone through, even working for these companies, calling them genocidal people, supporting Zionism and all this stuff with the Gaza group. And again, you get this with GB News boycotts as well. You're funding hatred, you're funding racism, xenophobia. Well, actually, what GB News does is it tells the truth. There's nothing we're allowed to put on air that isn't true. It's all fact checked. It all goes through legal scrutiny, and it all goes through editorial scrutiny. It's not just that I can go up there and say whatever I like. There is scrutiny involved to make sure that I'm telling the truth if I'm saying something on air. And that goes for every presenter who ever hosts a show. That's the facts. Now, what you saw in that video clip there is propaganda. It's propaganda. We saw actually Josh Howie had a similar attack on him just a week ago, where he was talking about paedophiles in the Church of England, and it was clipped up as he added this. He made this statement, which, if you take it out of context, does sound like he's calling gay people, LGBT plus, Q plus, whatever the fuck it is. Excuse my language. It's calling those people paedophiles, which he's not, which he wasn't doing. And of course, because the clip is edited and people don't go to watch the full context clip, they believe what they see. That's a problem we've got in our society.
Yeah, so you may have seen here, just having a look at their website, Stop Funding Hate. So they've got this article, who's still advertising on GB News? Of course, they've got that, evil, racist, fascist at the top of the article, Nigel Farage, to rile up the leftists. And they claim here GB News has reportedly now lost over 100 million quid as major brands continue to steer clear. And they've done an expose of all the people who have the, audacity to advertise on a channel that doesn't follow the same narrative as the BBC, calling them out. They're launching they've got a crowdfunder as well. They've also mentioned here what you can do to take action, and they've said that you can let them know about the growing controversies surrounding anti-LGBTQ and anti-Muslim content on GB News. I'm sure you all will have seen that big report from the Muslim Council for Britain, clearly trying to shut down GB News, suggesting that it is a channel filled with anti-Muslim hatred. I mean, Charlie, would you say that GB News goes too hard on Islam? Do you think that they're sometimes inappropriate in how much they speak about Islam, or do you think that the criticisms that of the religion and cultural differences that they air on there, you think that that's valid and a good conversation to be had?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that there's something quite comical about calling out GB News or suggesting that it's losing advertising revenue and then having to set up a GoFundMe for their own campaign.
I did think that was quite ironic.
Good point.
There's something doesn't quite add up, and just as you say, look, clipping things up from what is a comedy channel when there is context clearly taken out of context, I'm sure there are lots of other people that shop at Marks and Spencer's other than women. So it's, again, I'm sure that might, if there's some market research out there, that might be the biggest demographic. But the idea that they're specifically targeting women means that this is a completely vindictive and totally unjustified and a campaign just built on hate, really. Yes. Taking these clips out of context and targeting a particular demographic and making what I assume their view would be women of a certain age that might shop at Marks and Spencer's, who should be terrified about, and feel terrible about themselves if they dare tune into GB News. How dare they? I think it's ridiculous. But look, it's what is attractive. And by the way, no one asks you to shop at Marks and Spencer's. No one asks you to watch GB News. People can watch it. If they don't like it, they can change the channel. They can come back at another time for another program. If they don't like what they see in Marks and Spencer's, they can go elsewhere. It's called freedom, and it's something that we all cherish. I know, particularly here and on this show, which leads me on to the answer about just free speech in general. There will always be people with views, some quite far out there, but that, the first thing I'll say is I remember being back at school, which was a long time ago, and I always remember one of the best things that a great teacher ever told me was that if you're thinking something, or want to ask a question, you must ask it, because there is no doubt that there is someone else out there in the room that wants to ask the same question, or is feeling the same thing, or is thinking the same thing. So just put your hand up and ask that question. And there'll be people out there right across the country that are feeling a particular way, that have a particular strength of feeling about something. They might be totally nonplussed about something else. But I think, language is important, and we've got to get it right. But, there will be people out there that might not be, media trained, great TV presenters up and down the country. They might have a particular view. They just want to express that view, and it will be a view that many, many people hold in their head and their hearts. And for too long, that debate has been shut down because it's been too pernickety about the type of language. And if you dare say that, if you even dare talk about immigration, you're branded a racist. Well, no, we've seen far too many stories about grooming gangs. We've seen far too many stories about the lack of community cohesion. And there are people who want to speak up that haven't felt able to, who will go on and say exactly what they think. And a lot of people will, even if they don't agree necessarily with the language, and you can attack people for language, which I tend not to do actually, because, as I say, it's people just trying to express themselves, but the sentiment and the feeling is there. And that's something that can't be ignored. So, it is a channel of free speech. It should remain so. Of course, if anybody says anything that's too extreme, we have a whole Ofcom situation, whether that's fit for purpose or not, another conversation for another time. I think it needs reform. But ultimately, there's a way in which you complain.
The country needs reform, Charlie.
Yeah.
I daren't say you would agree with that, but...
Well, I'd reform Ofcom. I think that's they've overstretched in a number of ways. But I think it's a platform to allow people to say what they want to say, and there could be someone that equally vehemently disagrees, and they too will have their right to disagree, and you can have a conversation about why that both people stand in the position that they do. So I think it's all fine. If you don't like it, change the channel.
Yeah, exactly. Elliott, so Paul, our very dedicated viewer, has messaged in saying, why did the lefties assume they are speaking for the masses when they are the minority? And I think I notice this in a lot of conversations I have when, let's say I'm speaking to someone who doesn't know what my politics are. They'll say something like, oh God, isn't Trump a total Nazi, or back when the Tories were popular, say something like, oh, they're evil Tories. I'm just assuming that I have the same opinion as them without even asking. It seems like it's often a small group of people shouting the loudest, live in a bubble where they presume that everyone agrees with them. Do you think, Elliott, that there are a significant number of people in the country that want GB News shut down and genuinely think that it is wrong for them to have a voice and have a channel? Or do you think it's just a small group of crazy leftists fueling this online campaign who are just shouting the loudest?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a good proportion of people that would like to see it shut down. All the Labour voters, I'm sure, the 33%. Who are no longer 33% right now, I'd imagine. But I think there's a lot of people who would like to see it shut down. In terms of these actions that we're seeing with boycotting businesses and boycotting GB News and M&S, I don't think there's many people that would go to those lengths, because it is extreme. You're attacking people for the very reason that they're saying stop funding hate, they are hating. So I don't see many people agreeing with that, even maybe Liberal Democrat voters and Tory voters who are not particularly right wing. But yeah, I mean, look, you can choose to shop at any business, like Charlie said. There's businesses that I don't like, that I would never go to, but I'm not going to go online. I'm not going to go and spray their windows with paint. I'm not going to smash the glasses. In Newcastle before Christmas, one of the banks, I think it was HSBC, got smashed up, and there was paint all over the windows, and there was a massive, big load of commotion in the street. And you never see people from Reform or the Tory party going to, woke businesses and doing that. It's always from one side that we see this stuff.
Yeah,
and that's
Elliott,
the whole hypocrisy of it.
Yeah, Elliott, if you watched let's say a slightly left-leaning TV show, and when it was on the commercial break, you saw an advert come up for M&S, would you then assume that M&S is left-wing and say that you never want to shop there again?
Well, of course not. It's just business. Like advertising is just part of business, and GB News is a business, M&S is a business, and they're collaborating together in a deal to make more money essentially, and that's just the way it works. That's the way every business works. They don't all sit there asking each CEO, or what's your political views? Each manager, what's your political views? Okay, I don't agree with you, so I'm not going to invest in this business. I'm not going to collaborate with you. That's just not how it works.
Exactly. I mean, when I'm watching GB News, when I see an advert come up for, say, boxed boilers before the weather, I don't go, boxed boilers, they must be really right wing. It doesn't really make me think anything about the country, about the company's politics. I just think they know they're advertising on a channel that's getting X number of views, and they're hoping to get X number of people buying their boilers as a consequence.